might remember my presentation, my previous presentation about climate change. And today I'll be discussing carbon tax, which can be a solution of climate change. I'll first explain you about the definition of carbon tax and then explore the origins of it and countries that implemented carbon tax and advantages and disadvantages of carbon tax, and I'll finish with quiz. Carbon tax is a tax intended to discourage the emission of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, especially one levied on burning fossil fuels and also industrial process.
Levied.
Levied on burning of fossil fuels and also industrial progress. And I'll explain you the origin of carbon tax.
I'll explain, not you.
Carbon tax is first proposed by David Gordon Wilson in 1973, and unlike other policies that just prohibited emissions, it encouraged people to find efficient way to reduce the carbon emission. I'll explain you countries that implemented carbon tax.
I'll explain.
Not
you.
I'll explain countries
사연시간이
that implemented carbon tax. Uruguay is known for highest carbon tax rate with 167 US dollars per metric ton of CO2, but it only covered 5% of Uruguay's carbon emission. And next is Finland. Finland was first country to implement a carbon tax, and from 1990 to 2003, Finland reduced 27% of carbon emission. And lastly, Sweden. Sweden is one of the successful carbon tax examples. Sweden grew its economy above the European average after implementing carbon tax. And now I explain you advantages of carbon tax. First, it can reduce carbon emissions. As I mentioned earlier, the carbon tax original purpose is to reduce carbon emissions by make carbon intensive goods costly. And second, it can encourage clean energy adaptation. Carbon tax makes industrial progress more expensive, so it can encourage people to use renewable energies such as solar energy. And third, it can fund green initiative. The revenues from the carbon tax, the government can fund green initiative and also invest to welfare program for citizens. And next, I will introduce you disadvantages of carbon tax. First is regressive nature. A regressive tax system affects low-income families more than wealthier ones. So it is inefficient for low-income families. And second, it risks competitiveness. As the carbon tax leads products more costly than other countries' products which don't introduce carbon tax. So it will lack of its competitiveness. And third, lack of supports. Carbon tax gives lots of financial burden to citizens and other corporations. So there might be lots of oppositions. So government might be hard to implement the carbon tax. This was the end of my presentation. And do you have any questions? Then who first proposed carbon tax?
David Gordon.
Yeah, David Gordon Wilson. And name countries that implemented carbon tax.
Like Sweden,
Sweden,
Uruguay,
Finland.
And name advantages of carbon tax.
Reduce of carbon emissions.
Reduce carbon emission and encourage clean energy adaptation and fund green initiatives. Thank you for listening.